You are correct. My leader is riding a giant spider, and he has a lance. I did say this game was a lot of fun. Jousting spider. Haha. Hello everybody, and welcome. My name is Ursa Ryan, and today I'm going to be playing Age of Wonders 4, and I have a simple question. If I play a lot of 4X games like Civilization 6, how easy is it to pick up Age of Wonders 4 from no experience or gameplay at all? Now this question first came about because I was kindly approached by Paradox Interactive to be sponsored to play Age of Wonders 4, particularly their newest expansion, Eldritch Realms, on screen now, and that put me on a little bit of a mission. Age of Wonders 4 is a fantasy, magical 4X game. It's critically acclaimed, and people on Discord, comments, channel supporters have all been telling me to play it for some time, but I have 0 hours in this game. I have a lot of hours in Civilization 6, and I play a lot of other Paradox Interactive titles. Millennia, Crusader Kings 3, Victoria 3, Hearts of Iron 4, but Age of Wonders 4, I've never really been able to get around to playing it, and that's on me. I am, however, a professional player of video games, so today we're going to dive straight in. I'm going to pick up Age of Wonders 4 from 0 hours, and hopefully by the end of this video, we'll be able to answer the question. I am very, very looking forward to this. If you would like to play the DLC Eldritch Realms or Age of Wonders, remember that you can support the channel by clicking the link in the comments of this video. It should be pinned or in the description of the video. Now, the first thing I did was not to play the game. No, I'm hip. I'm down with the kids. You know this about me. Ursa Ryan speaks about himself in third person all the time. I started my investigations on YouTube. Now, there's a huge amount of content out there of people that have made some fantastic guides and playthroughs for this game, and I would recommend the 3 YouTubers / playlists that I'm going to pop up on the screen now. Italian Spartacus, Jumbo Pixel, and Potato McWhiskey. Check them out. They've made some brilliant stuff. And after I'd consumed their content over an unfathomably large amount of tea, I decided to get started with the first tutorial level. I selected it, went in, put it on normal difficulty because it described it as I know strategy games, give it to me straight. I thought, yeah, sure, why not? And because there were so many different factions to play, I went for the top one, the humans. To be honest with you, at this point, I didn't really know what any of the traits or abilities were. I just normally assume that humans are somewhere in the middle, pretty adaptable, and generally speaking tend to be a very good place to start, and so it proved. Now, there are plenty of guides to this first tutorial on the internet that do a really good job of explaining your first game, so I'm not going to repeat that in full detail, but there's a few things you need to know about how this game progressed. Firstly, you need to know a little bit about the map. We're 28 turns into this game, and as you can see already, it's a really, really pretty game. There is a huge amount of 3D mapping going on with hills, some really lush forests. Look at the mountain ranges. Look how insanely cool they are. I had a beautiful coastal city, of course, called Byzantium. I refused to change. I even had my own little source of sheep and butterflies. I never noticed the butterflies. That's really cute. The map itself had only 2 opponents. It was quite small. You can see this continent only really goes in a sort of small amount left and right of me, and there was a second continent over this small sea. You can also see if you zoom out, you get to this really, really cool map view. Oh, I love games that do this. How useful is that? I am the dark red. There is nothing particularly threatening about this map. It honestly was an incredibly good one to start on. I learned pretty quickly that cities themselves are pretty easy, to be honest, to manage. The map, if you zoom out a little bit, you can see is divided into chunks of land called domains, and you own one for every population you have in a city. So Byzantium being population 10, I own 10 chunks of land. And on it, I've been putting little things like farms down, foresters, research posts, quarries. There are all kinds of things you can pop down, but they all give you yields that are described up here. If you play Civ 6 and other strategy games along those lines, even Civ 5, you'll know a lot of these sort of resources, and they do a very similar thing. Food manages population growth. The more food you have, the faster your population grow. The bigger your city, the more of it you need to sustain yourself, and you generally get food by putting down farms. So far, so easy. Production does literally what production does in Civ 6 as well. You use it to make buildings. So for instance, I'm making a wizard tower at the moment. Yep, that's right. I'm a wizard. The better wizard I am, the taller tower I have. Is it compensating? Absolutely not. But it is purple and it is glowing. You also have this city stability, which pretty much works as a happiness mechanic. If you keep a city particularly happy, it gains a lot of extra yields. So again, very similar mechanic to in Civ 6. At the moment, my city is stable. peaceful? No, it's orderly, which means I've got 10% extra yields, but it can go all the way down to unrest and then rioting, which is very bad. Gold we'll talk about in a little bit, because gold has a special significance in Age of Wonders. It is very important, but is essentially used in a very similar way to Civ 6. You use it to rush things. It pays maintenance costs, but you can buy out things like buildings and armed units. So for instance, if I had 280 gold right now, I could finish the wizard tower in one go. And even better, the more of a building you build, the cheaper the rush is. So yes, it absolutely does discount as you go. Love that mechanic. It's brilliant. And then we had some other stuff coming in that I took a little bit of time to get used to. Firstly, we have something called draft. It is a second type of production. Production is used to do things in a city, like build structures. Draft is separately used to make troops. So you can make a troop and you can make a building at the same time, and they both work off different resources. The thing I learned very quickly is that draft really does not get used as much as production. Production is still king. Just like in Civ, the more of it you have, the better your city gets quicker. Draft is used to make troops, and you do need a lot of it if you want to make some very powerful troops. I'm only making tier 1 and 2 troops at the moment. There are 5 tiers, and they get exponentially more expensive as you go up. But, and here's the big but, you don't actually get to have that many troops for a large period of time, because troops are really, really expensive to maintain. You can see, I actually, even though it says I've got plus 90 gold, I'm actually making 230 of it, and I'm losing 141 unit upkeep. Just a single scout, for instance, takes 6 gold per turn. A pikeman, 8 gold. A bannerman, 12 gold. I learned very quickly that your city is very actually rarely making draft, and sure, if you're not making a troop, it does convert to food, but it's at a very low percentage, so draft doesn't actually end up being that important. Knowledge is pretty much science when you think about it in Civ terms. The more knowledge you have, the faster you learn spells and arcane research, and arcane research is effectively your tech tree. As you go through the game, you tech up, you complete books, and as you complete books, you unlock bigger books, and as the books get bigger, they get more powerful. The more knowledge you have, the better. Mana is a little bit more complicated. It's a bit like gold, but you use it to cast spells and keep magical troops. Don't worry about this for now, but I realized quite quickly that mana is less important than gold. You need quite a lot of it, but it's only important if you run out, and it's actually quite tricky to run out unless you go really crazy. And then finally you have this last resource, Imperium. Imperium is effectively your ability to govern. You use it to do anything cool in your empire, and you cannot get enough of it. It is so important. It is by far the most important resource in the game. If something gives you the option to take Imperium, you take it. If something gives you the option to spend it, think twice, because there are so many things that require you to spend Imperium. Would you like to found another city? That'll be Imperium. Would you like to pick up a special empire development that increases your ability to govern and gives you cool abilities? That would also be Imperium. Do you want to rush populations? You can press a button that gives you instantly an entire population for 3. It's like an immigration mechanic. Well, good. That'll cost you Imperium. And finally, these lovely city-states, or these vassals. I actually have quite a few vassals around the map already. I've got 2 of them, and I'm working on a 3rd. They effectively act as city-states, and the friendlier you get with them, the more they give you. So Crosswall, for instance, at the moment, they really like me, so they're giving me 45% of their income. Very tasty. If I want to boost my relationship with them, that'll cost Imperium. If I want to integrate this vassal and turn it into one of my own cities, so incorporate it into my empire, that'll cost Imperium. The big limiting factor is Imperium, and there are so few things that you can do in the game that actually gives you more of it, so be very careful. It is like gold dust. It is more like gold dust than actual gold. At the beginning of the game, Byzantium flourished. Everything I did seemed to work really nicely. The food was good, the production was good, the gold was good. I just simply sat here building things, putting down improvements that boosted buildings, and then I bought the buildings and made them. Pretty easy, and intuitively, it's so simple to get your head around. If you've played especially Civ 5, you will really understand this mechanic very quickly. All of the buildings get put in the city itself. They don't get put onto the map like in Civ 6. It's all contained in the city. And as you build one thing, it upgrades the next. So for instance, I built a wizard tower and that unlocked wizard tower level 2. If I build the market, I unlock the mint. If I build the mint, I unlock the merchant's guild. If I build the mint, you see how it goes. It turned out as well that as by playing as this Mr. Human chap, he gave me access to a type of resource called order. This is essentially light and healing and vassal manipulation. And that was quite helpful because one of the first things I noticed about this game is there are tons of tomes tomes, and it is incredibly overwhelming as to which ones to pick, because each one of these has a different set of abilities and spells and techs. Like, imagine a tech tree, but there are so many techs you can physically never get them all. Like, you can't, it's impossible. So I just used what I was given. At the beginning, I started with the Tome of Faith. It's an order tome, and I just simply kept picking up order tomes. So I went for the beacon. I think I crossed into alchemy because it seemed really cool. I'm not actually sure if this was any good, but I just liked the look of it. But I simply played into the strengths of my empire. I had a lot of order, so when I could pick different tomes, I simply went, let me take an order tome, and I just kept picking on this front. Optimized? No. But was it easy to do? Absolutely was. Sometimes if a game is pushing you in a certain direction, you just have to go for it. Coming at Age of Wonders from the Civ background, the biggest difference I found, the biggest headache to get my head around at first, was combat. Units go around the map in stacks of 6. I have 2 stacks of them right now. Both of them are led by a hero. This hero here is my actual leader and ruler. Be careful about your rulers. If they get killed and then your capital gets taken at the same time, you just lose the game. You've got to keep both of them in play. This is kind of like your king, like a chess game, except a very violent and aggressive king. And then I have a second hero here. Heroes are so powerful, way more powerful than units. They level up, they have abilities, they're really cool. But as you can see, they move around the map. Combat itself has a couple of layers. When you go into combat, you basically can see a little bit of a danger bar. Your strength is put on the left-hand side and the enemy strength is on the right-hand side. In every combat scenario, you can press this button, auto combat. You press it, the game has a little bit of a think, and you can see it resolves the combat. I have taken a considerable amount of damage here, but everyone's dead. So this is where Age of Wonders becomes quite interesting. The game can either take a really long time or a really short amount of time, depending on how much you want to automate it. I could leave this right now, press close, and then just be done with this result. Alternatively, I can actually watch the replay, where I can go into the map and see how the AI actually fought this for me. So you can see this is what happened in the particular map that got me this result. So you can see the 2 enemy units. It looks like there's 2 archers and a shield unit. All my units were moved around into sort of little defensive formations, and the game just took it from turn to turn. Now, sometimes the AI does a really good job. Sometimes the AI does not so good a job. Like right now, it's being very, very passive, and it's just sort of sitting a lot of my units back. Nothing inherently wrong, but again, there you go. A flame unit just hit my own leader. You didn't need to do that. You really didn't need to do that. So what you can say is, no, I think I could actually do this better, and you can retry. This lets you manually take over the combat. Combat feels quite a lot like a game like Humankind, Endless Legend, that sort of amplitude game. There's a hex grid, it gives you a very zoomed in version of whatever's going on at the map at that point, and you have escape routes behind you and behind the enemy. Defense always moves first, and then you move your troops around. Keep your defensive positions at the front, so this shield unit is at the front, and stand your ranged units behind, so they don't get flanked. Is this a nice hill? Brilliant. Pop all of your ranged units on top of it, and you can get the drop on anybody else below you. And then, to defend yourself, get your melee units to move around the side. That way you create these amazing little defensive positions that the AI can't get to. As you can see, I have a lot of units here compared to the AI. We should be absolutely fine. And then, whilst your units all wait, you simply wait for the AI to get into position. There you go. You're just going to stand at the bottom of the hill, right by my archers. Okay, if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to keep chucking things at you. You are correct. My leader is riding a giant spider, and he has a lance. I did say this game was a lot of fun. Jousting spider! Haha! Different units have different abilities, like for instance this hero actually has magic missile from D&D that never misses. The other cool thing you can do is if you get to a stage in combat where you're like, yeah, I've done a pretty good job here, but I can't bother to finish it, you can then put auto combat back on and then speed it up, and the AI will end up resolving it for you. Will they do as good a job as you? Probably not. I mean, my hero seems to be just randomly running backwards and forwards. Hey, don't complain. I'm sure it's fine. I mean, yeah, look, they finished that battle by blowing up my unit. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I did that and I lost a lot less health than before. But that introduced another important mechanic that I learned really quickly. Yes, you can have stacks of 6 army, but if you press this button, you have like a very cool little red hexagon that appears around you. You can kind of see it around there. This is the reinforce range. I started a battle with this unit in the reinforce range of the battle that happened. That means they came in and helped. You can have up to 3 stacks of units, and making sure that 18 units are in every combat, particularly towards the mid and end game, that makes a huge difference and is one of the most important mechanics I picked up. I would very much recommend you do that. Now for me, the game went like so. I found city-states, I gave them these little things called whispering stones, and these started to increase the relationship, and they became my vassals. I've got another one up here, Thunderdale, and they started giving me their income. I also began to make these things called outposts. Those I spent Imperium on, and they became cities. You're allowed 3 cities at the beginning of the game, so I made 3, and it actually proved to be fairly helpful. Never go above your city cap. I learnt this pretty quickly. If you go above your city cap, you take a huge penalty to every resource. It is not worth it. I also got forward settled a lot. This yellow is, of course, the mole faction. Yep, we are fighting a bunch of moles. They started under the ground. Yep, that's right. There's a whole second layer to this map underneath the map that you see right now. So this capital city of Stoneroot is actually directly below this city-state, and these tiny little tunnels will let you go above and below ground. They appeared and settled right next to me and started claiming a bunch of land around me, which gave me cause for war. You actually learn pretty quickly that although it's really threatening when the AI does this, it's not really a problem because the map is absolutely massive. It does give you grievances, however. As they take land around you, you build up these grievances, and as you get higher and higher, you can dedicate entire justified wars against them. Justified wars are very good. If you declare an unjustified war, well, you get very, very big penalties. Another thing I learned to watch out for is this on the map. These are called infestations. These effectively are like barbarian camps. Now, for large portions of the game, they are simply inactive, but if you leave them for too long, they start to patrol. That means they spawn units and then scatter, just patrolling their own lands, and the infestation gets bigger and bigger. Eventually, they send raiding parties. In this particular case, this great bird nest sent a bunch of phoenixes as well as some ents over to my land, and they started pillaging a lot of stuff. It wasn't very nice at all, and it took a large amount of troops to go and defeat it. Normally, these infestations really don't matter because they're kind of ages away from anything and they'll never bother you, but if they're right on your land, just be careful. They will wreck things. Now, a few turns later on turn 47, I found myself in a war with the Molemen. This city of Silverthance had grown so aggressively against my city of Quentin that I sent an army and I vassalized it. That's right, I took the city over and made it into one of my vassals, a little bit like the original Crosswall. So that's a fun mechanic. You can take cities from the AI, and even though they are major civilizations, you can make them into city-states. What I then had to do was take a very large army. This is the aforementioned 6 unit stacks, 3 stacks of 6 units, 18 troops in total. I've actually got 3 heroes here as well. And I went down and sieged their capital. In Age of Wonders, attacking cities is quite interesting. They have defenses. You need to breach their defenses before you can have a big fight with them. Sieging is fairly easy. You just take an army, you leave it outside the city, and it counts down. You can also run these projects to speed it up. So I spent a little bit of my gold by investigating in sabotage projects and tunneling projects, and I might have gassed the city with poisonous gas, but that's got nothing to do with anything and I wouldn't worry about it. We're not using poison to get rid of moles in our garden, not at all. Eventually, after you wait long enough, the walls come down and you can engage in a battle with whoever's left in the city. You can see 6 troops and 3 troops. There's 9 in total against our 18. This was a fairly easy victory for me, but it was made easier because, well, for the few turns before that point, and especially around the city of Silverthance, I'd actually taken out a couple of stacks of their units before they could reinforce their own land. It was quite easy actually. I just sent my troops across the sea into this tunnel, and hey presto, I was right by their capital. The city is destroyed, and the mole is out of the game and defeated. Whilst I was managing all of this, another core mechanic really did make itself apparent. Not only is Imperium one of the most important resources, but so is gold. Compared to Civ, gold is so much more important. You use it in literally everything. I'm currently spending 200 of it per turn on pretty much those 3 or 4 stacks of units. It's very, very expensive to have units on the map, but you also need gold if you want to build anything. So for instance, if I want to build an academy, I have to put a down payment of 95 gold down, as well as the 315 production it takes to actually build the building in the first place. So if you run out of gold, you physically can't use your production. It's the same with units. If I wanted to actually build an archer, yes, you use draft to build your archers, but you need to put a down payment of gold down as well. You also need gold for this mechanic called the Rally of the Lieges. This is something that I won't bore you with now, but effectively the more vassals you've got, every 15 turns or so, they give you troops that you can physically just buy with gold. It's way cheaper than making them yourself. Think about your cities as being reliable but expensive ways of making your own troops. City-states will give you just a random assortment of some troops that'll be really good, like storm giants, very powerful mythic units, or slightly wimpier scouts, for instance. You have no choice over the matter, but you can just pay to get them in. However, it is very expensive to do so. 450 gold. Gold is very much at a premium. It is never as such a thing as having too much gold, and I ran out of it several times in this game. It was a repeated problem I had. You also do it to buy more heroes. The hero cap goes up as the game goes through. Again, you can spend Imperium and get more heroes if you want to. Imperium, Imperium, Imperium. Very expensive, but very good. And here we are, slightly later into the game on turn 61, and once I'd taken over the capital, what I actually had was a couple of stacks or 3 stacks of very advanced, very leveled units. So I simply moved them down to the second person, the other enemy of mine, the angry lizard people, or toadlings, cursed toadlings. Of course they are. Now, they had quite a few cities scattered around the map, 4 of them in fact. So I ignored them all, and I simply went straight to their capital. Conveniently, it was where the ruler was. Remember what I said before? Kill the ruler and take the capital, and you win the game immediately. So that's very much what I did. And hey presto, it's a small map, it's pretty easy difficulty, but I had my first victory. A military victory. Ursa Ryan aggressive in 4X games? No, never. But that was my first game. And just like in any good 4X, I really enjoyed an effect of snowballing. I took a long time defeating my first enemy, but once they fell, it was very quickly to bring that energy and take out the second. Very enjoyable indeed. I absolutely loved my giant spider mount, the cutest bit of the game. I also must give Age of Wonders a huge shout out for having one of the best ending timeline screens in the game. Millennia, Civ 6, looking at you. This is how to do it. Look, this is turn 1, and this is what it looks like when you bring the game out. You can see me settling around the map, claiming land, conquering people, creating 3 cities. Hugely satisfying. And there's a bunch of fun little graphs as well that show you how you were doing compared to the enemies. You can see economically, I was very much behind the pack until about mid-game. Military, I never actually had more troops from the AI. So that's one of those things that I actually took away from being a little bit, it was a lesson, but research was pretty good. And there we had it. First game complete. Where do I sit now? Well, I've watched a lot of content on YouTube. I've watched Potato play some very advanced games, and I have all the knowledge that I need from Italian Spartacus and Jumbo Pixel. The next step for me was deciding what to play next. Do I feel I'm ready to really appreciate the new DLC? Well, yes, actually, I think I do. Here's kind of how I would sum it up right now. Am I up to speed with all of the different victory conditions of the game? No, there are multiple victory conditions. They're to do with expansion and science and magic. I still am not entirely sure about how all of those work, although the tooltips are very handy, and again, the online guides are wonderful. But there's one thing I do know, military victory. I've got that under my belt. And if you're good at combat and if you're good at military, everything else in theory should fall into place quite nicely. I also feel like I really have a good sense of the core game mechanics. City expansion, well, I think my knowledge of Civ 5 and Civ 6 really does play into that very well. The combat mechanics, moving units around the map, it feels a little bit like a sort of Heroes of Might and Magic game from back yesteryear. But I really did get the hang of the 3-stack mechanic, taking 3 stacks of sick troops around with you and basically being unkillable, casting magic as you go around the map as well, something I haven't really touched on, but I had a good sense of how to do that as well. Why not just get stuck into Eldritch Realms? Let's do it. We'll create the game and pick, I think, the first story realm. Now this is a realm from the newest DLC that begins to tell a story, and unlike other 4X games, this is really fun. If you play the maps through, you can actually progress with a story, with a narrative. It's really cool. Shadows and torches. We'll again play, I think this time on normal again. That seems to be a really good fit for me. If I've progressed enough with the new mechanics of the game, that should balance out with the fact that maybe the DLC will be a little bit of a mystery to me. So I've got the core mechanics down, I'll keep on the same difficulty, and I'll try and learn the new stuff. The new map will have an entirely new layer, so we'll have have an underground that is actually slightly smaller than normal, an overground, and then a new abyss layer, Umbral Abyss. Mega cities, so cities on this map will be very big, and no free cities at all. Oh, that's interesting. Vassals seem to be very important last time. And again, I think I'm just going to pick one of the core factions. Let's go for this first one. They are empowered by magic, so they begin to get strengthened if they take magic damage. They're very good at dealing out magic damage, and they are good at leveling up quickly. They're also good if they have access to the sea, and every time I unlock a tome, they get extra knowledge. Okay, that's great. I feel like I've got a good handle on maybe half of those mechanics, so let's just get stuck in. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of how this second game went. Unlike in my first game, where I actually had a capital city, this time I started with just some army, some heroes, a whole bunch of story lore, and I was plonked right in the Umbral Abyss. This is the first and main core component of this newest DLC, a whole new map layer that I hadn't discovered so far. We now have the surface, the underground, and this horrific Eldritch realm of chaos and tentacles and eyes and horror and general insanity. Tasty. My mission was fairly simple. Escape the prison of some Eldritch god horrors and go and find my castle and rebel and try and fight my way through. How hard could it be? Just follow the quest markers. This'll be easy. Well, spoilers, 18 turns later, it wasn't easy. It actually took me 2 or 3 goes to do this properly, but essentially what you needed to do was travel along a road and navigate this horrific gloom. Now, gloom is a new terrain that is only found in the Umbral Abyss most of the time, and the longer you stand in it, the more it damages your troops. Literally, they waste away in a matter of about 5 or 6 turns. It's horrifying, and that's why it took me a couple of goes, because I'd stumble across enemies with like half health and they'd wipe the floor with me. You can, however, find these beautiful little outposts that literally make beautiful shining light, heal you, and then you can go again. I found my way out into the real world where I realized actually the gloom itself, it was spreading. Yeah, that effect is now on the overground. It's not nice. We went east and east and east, and eventually I found my city. The story, however, did not end there. I had a mission. For even though I was in the overworld, or the surface world as us mortals call it, I'm still stuck on the edge of the void. You can see the map sort of falls away towards the end. We're no longer in the normal material plane. We have to return to it, and to do that we have to go through the gateway. The problem is, I don't know where the world gate is. So we have to find a wizard, meet a deserter, find a prisoner and free them, and defeat or negotiate with the warden. 4 quests, but luckily for us, 4 markers on the map. How hard could it be? Well, again, another 10 turns later, it turns out it was pretty hard because the map is full of very, very tough enemies, including this chap, the Katuk. That's an apostrophe and not enough vowels in that sentence / word. Shataka. These insectoids act as effectively the jailers of the realm, and they're not so happy that I escaped. They have a lot of troops all over the map and they keep ambushing me. Now, so far, this whole map or story-driven campaign has felt certainly like a step up from the last one, but there are some things that I am really getting to grip with now. I do like the city mechanics. I am slowly learning how to put all of my smaller buildings in place to get all of my yields up, and then using those to spread my city, and then knowing when to use Imperium to attract population and when not to. Just sort of feel it out. If you can get a city to about 10 population, it doesn't really need to go a lot higher than that, I find. And as you can see, we are spreading and spreading, and I'm making sure that I have every single province with every single resource cleared out that I can. So far, so good. In fact, actually, this particular story was slightly easier because, unbeknownst to me at the time, this had the mega cities trait on this map, which means we only get 1 city. I can't build any more, but the borders of the city are 5 bigger than normal, which basically makes this city infinite. So as I attract population, we literally can just go further and further out. Like, let's put myself a farm there and then attract some more population. And oh, look at this. Get myself a beautiful conduit. I'm going to attract myself some more population. You sort of see what I mean, right? I don't think cities get this big in the normal game, but it's still good fun to find actually that there is a point where it doesn't matter how big a city gets, it's not that useful to you anymore. About 10 to 15 pop is about the perfect point. I was also starting to find that when I found myself in combat with other major players, especially now we're out of the original tutorial, the auto combat feature isn't as reliable as you'd think it would be, and taking over manual combat is giving me better results now than if I auto combat. But another thing I really like about this game is that you simply choose to auto combat first, see if you like the results, and then fight the fight yourself if you do. As we now progress to turn 50, the other major lesson I was learning is that 3 stacks of units are so important. For the majority of my fight with this insectoid person who I have just defeated on turn 50, I was only taking 2 stacks of units into combat, and that meant that he was throwing 2 stacks at me, and we kept having these big fights. I would win, but take some significant losses and then have to retreat back to my outposts to heal, and then come back, and in that time, he would just build himself back up to 2 stacks. There is a huge mechanic in Age of Wonders, especially with some of the newer Eldritch spells, that mean you want to overwhelm your opponents. Instead of going in for 2 stack on 2 stack fights, even taking a 3rd stack of 6 troops in, you want to overwhelm your enemies. It really, really does push the advantage of battles in your favor hugely. Big lesson learned. From this point onwards, I very much was encouraged to only attack cities with 3 stacks of troops, never again with 2. Even though I had a bunch of very powerful heroes, it was quite difficult. Also, it turns out that sieging a city is really, really difficult. This particular one, it was their only city, their capital. It took me 17 turns to siege it, even with some projects. Now, I'm sure if you went through the tomes of the game, there are definitely tomes that help you with sieges, such as the 3rd tier Tome of Devastation. Devastator spheres are a really good project. It helps you take down cities faster, and as you go through the Imperium, you can pick up this skill called Siege Specialization, which gives you another siege project slot. I didn't take this before I started the fight. I wish I had. But lesson learned. That's why this siege took so long. I only had 2 stacks, and it took 17 turns, but we did eventually defeat the enemy. That turned out to be a little bit of a side project, however, because when I took out this horrendously hard AI, look, he's even down as hard, I realized I still hadn't done any of my quests, apart from I had found the warden and become friends with him. Or actually, I just didn't do anything and he became friends with me. Hey, I'm just really likable, what can I say? I was also learning some major lessons about infestations and controlling the map. As you can see, we have a huge dragon in my lands. Now, this thing is flying around and pillaging everything and being a general nuisance. It's because, if we zoom out, you can see there is this threatened red area. Do you see there's more dragons over here? There's more troops? Well, it turns out that original gateway to the Umbral abyss still has that nest, and that nest just got bigger and bigger and bigger and has now spread all the way into my land. This probably took me about 10 to 15 turns of wasted economy to deal with. It was a huge stepping point, a problem for me that I never really got myself back over, and if this was a harder difficulty, I feel like killing that particular nest of enemies would have been a huge priority point for me. But again, it taught me to stack troops up. You can see I've got 3 stacks of troops, and even though there are dragons, which is a tier 4 mythic unit, this is very powerful, they can easily be overwhelmed and killed, especially by using spells, which I was learning very quickly are hugely powerful. For instance, this is just a very cheap level 1 spell called Lightning Torrent, and I can go zap and smash the enemies and do significant damage to them. Do you see that? They've taken huge damage. And because I'm quite high level and I've got a lot of casting points, I can actually cast it a 2nd time this turn. A lot of these troops are now below half health. That is very good, because now it means I can run in and fight these creatures, auto combat, and see if I like the result. Meh, I've lost a few units, but it was a big threat and I can't be bothered to play it out right now. If I wanted to, I could just press retry and make sure I don't get any losses. Easy enough to do. And actually, let me show you that, because I'm realizing as I play more and more of this game, one of the major reasons why you beat the AI so much in terms of the result of auto combat versus manual combat is all about spells. Spells are so important in this game. You want to make sure that you are using all of the spells that you can. Let me show you what I mean. We're one turn into this combat. They are attacking me. I picked up a defensive position to make sure my defenders took any hit whilst they flew in. And you can see I could choose to fulminate the enemy troops, doing more damage to them, which I just did, or I could use it to summon troops. There are hugely useful things you can do. I also really like these evokers. Any tier 2 unit, they normally have really fun abilities. This one is a sort of chain lightning effect where I can blast the dragon multiple times, and whilst I do that, simply just take out all the troops behind him. Look, I'm already 2 kills for the good, and I haven't lost any units myself. Not too shabby. In fact, so far, this is going incredibly well for me. I'm charging their spellcasting troops, getting the kills, and making sure that they have nothing they can do. You see? Look at that. A couple of spells, and even though the auto combat wanted to lose half of my army, I won the battle with not a single loss. Trust yourself. Combat in this game is incredibly easy to pick up, and spellcasting is all important. Do not feel afraid to just burn spells if you can afford it. Not only is this Umbral Abyss a terrifying place, but the threats in it are incredibly potent. Sure, there is a huge amount of very valuable high-level treasure here, and I should point out as well, you should claim that treasure by making sure you expand your sanctuaries. The yields these things can provide are huge. Like this chitinous growth gives you 30 gold when your outpost expands into it. That is an obscene amount of stuff. Voidstones here, 30 mana. No joke, the yields in the Abyss are maybe triple the yields on the regular surface. It's very, very worth your while claiming as much of this land as you can, even though it is scary and full of Cthulhu. However, this gloom is terrifying. And at this point, because I'd let the threat expand so much, you can see the gloom has actually gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 domains into my land. You can see the purple on the map. That has sapped my happiness by an obscene amount. Big lesson for me in this game. Don't let that happen. I spoke to the developers about this, and they confirmed the way to stop this happening is to deal with the nest. Don't let it get out of control, push it back, and the gloom will retreat. I'm just showing you one of the huge battles that I had with the jailer before I destroyed him. This brings up another point I really like about Age of Wonders, and I would strongly encourage you to do. When it comes to combat, do not be afraid to press this button, Restart Combat. If you're not playing against a human, the AI will let you take as many goes as you want to fight combat as you want. Say, for instance, you are fighting and you're like, this combat's really not gone the way that I wish that it had. Because say you make a bad move, I've just moved half of my troops unnecessarily here, and the AI charges you and delivers some unnecessary losses, and you're like, hey, I made a strategic error this game. My hero, as you can see, has been killed like turn 1. You can simply restart combat and try again. Sure, is it a bit save scummy? Absolutely it is. But this is a game to learn. Our mission here today is to pick up Age of Wonders as quickly as we can, and this is a very good way of doing it. This brings me back to a point I was making before. Remember to take 3 stacks of troops around, because when you get caught with a smaller stack, getting a good combat result, even though, for instance, right now, we wiped the enemy troops without letting any of them get away, I still lost 3 units. If I had an extra stack of units, that wouldn't have happened. There was the other stack. I left them a little too far away from the rest of my troops. That's my bad. Now, eventually, in this scenario, we traveled around the map and went through different Umbral gates. This one led us to rescue a wizard who had been confined to their own prison. That was a difficult one to bust them out. I then found and sprung a prisoner who then joined my army. In fact, they were pretty awesome. They were like a level 15 hero when I rescued them, and absolutely are ridiculously powerful. Some of the most fun combat I've had so far has been just blasting people with cosmic spikes and other dangerous abilities. Yeah, a lot of fun. And eventually, even though Valor's End was population 26 by the end of the game or something obscene, we managed to track down the World Gate, hidden in the Abyss, which was then hidden in more Abyss. And then that took me to more Abyss, and then, no spoilers, but the gate was protected by some obscenely powerful troops that definitely took me a couple of goes to crack. But one thing I can confirm, I had a huge amount of fun just running around this massive map, finding quests, doing little tasks, and just ignoring some of the more normal mechanics of the game, like simply focusing on city mechanics. mechanics and exploring more into world casting mechanics, quest finding, and more importantly, lore. And eventually we won and returned to the main menu where, like from the first game, the leader of the second campaign is now stood, joining my pantheon forever. I also really like this system, I have to say. Every time you finish a game, you get to pick more and more rewards for yourself. You unlock game modes and new different traits and weapons, and I could see this becoming infinitely replayable. I really could. So we're 2 games in. The first game, very much a tutorial, really helped me to get a grasp of the game mechanics. Second game, absolutely fantastic introduction to Eldritch realms, especially the world map and navigation mechanics. Maybe not so good at the economy and at some of the more advanced economic choices, but hey, do I feel like I can now play Age of Wonders 4? I absolutely do. Am I genuinely excited to play another game? I really genuinely am. The new DLC is incredibly fun to play, and it gives you a real sense of high risk, high reward. Anything in the Umbral Abyss is extremely dangerous, and it will kick your teeth in if you do not treat it with respect. However, some of the biggest rewards of the game are hidden there, so especially mid to late game, it gives you a ever increasingly difficult ability and opportunity to challenge yourself and your high level spells and heroes and units. And as I'm sure you'll see, there are some very, very powerful combinations available. How do I feel on my journey on Age of Wonders 4? I think that I could have a crack at any game now and give it a good go. I don't think I'm quite at the highest difficulty level yet. I think we'll need probably one more game to test that, but I'd be excited to play some multiplayer or a more regular single player game. I've learned that spellcasting is incredibly important and is hugely useful at controlling combat. I've learned that summoning units is very powerful, especially against the AI. I've also learned that each of the unique races has something quite different to them. In my second game, for instance, these wonderful blue people were incredibly good at any tile or domain that had a river or ocean in it. I'd love to try them on an island game. I think that could be a lot of fun. In fact, let me show you some of the things that you could do. I could engage in the next story campaign, the Arcalot, or there's the Longshade or Coast of Fairgast maps, both of which have some really, really cool abilities. Like this Longshade has the Abyss in it. This feels like a really cool campaign. And the DLC comes with 6 preset factions. The 3 sirens are the ones I've already played, but you've got the Gloomwatch sirens, the little insect people, I thought. And then if you thought they were too normal, yep, you can be ruled by giant eldritch gods as well. What's wrong about that? I mean, look at this dude. Could you be any bigger? Do you need a massive eyeball in your chest? Both answers, of course, are yes. He's called the Disturbing. I would agree with the analysis, I really would. Let me put it this way. My review of the DLC, I'm looking at these options, I'm looking at these maps, and I'm genuinely looking forward to my next game. I am hooked. If that's not a glowing recommendation, I don't know what is. In fact, I might start a new game right now, but that might be another video, another story, for another time. Thank you so much again, Paradox Interactive, for sponsoring the video. Remember, if you would like to play the DLC or Age of Wonders 4, click on the link in the description of the video or in the comments, and until next time, I'll see you later. Goodbye! And finally, a very special shout out goes to Glorious Petra, Matthew Wilkinson, Paul Coffey, Portland, Clint Hennis, The Nickerman, Daddy Bear Todd, Toon General, Scott Stratton, Major King Kong, Skeptical Bear, Cinnamon Beard, Radiatore, Private Selection, Genoa Salami, Callum Billy, Garrett Gowan, Polar Beret, El Truant, Creston, RB Hedged, Mushkin Mandletort, Burial, I'm Daft, Gooberman, Dr. Bobby, Polar Waller Bear, Mixomatosis, NTG Golfman, Indigenous 68, Technology Poet, Teddy's Ursa, Zaf, Barnaby Rex, Charlie Bears, Flying Dutch Burbs, Nate the Great, Alex Frost, Mean Penguin, Interplanet Janet, Frankincense Battlezord, Sleepy Lab, Bookaluk 79, Bob Loblaw, Davalex, Geography Teacher, Juvara. Thank you everyone for your support. See you all in the next video. Goodbye!